Hey, what's up everyone? Johnny the Geek here, and today I'm going to be configuring another Hackintosh. This is a newer build with new chipsets, new CPUs, and so basically I'm using techniques and methods found on the Mac x86 website. So basically, although the steps that I take are specific to my particular hardware, it can be applied to many other systems that are like mine. So as I go through this, I'll explain and I'll show you what it is that you have to download for your particular system. Right, but first I wanted to show you what hardware that I'm working with, and so this is going to be a brief overview of what I've got. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was the motherboard. Now this particular motherboard has great support for building Hackintoshes. It is made by Gigabyte, and there are many models by Gigabyte that works very well with building Hackintosh. So this particular motherboard is the Gigabyte GA-Z68X UD3P-B3. I've had a lot of luck with the UD3P models, right? And so I've got 16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance Blue memory. It's a DDR3 1600 megahertz. The processor is the Core i7 2600K, and the graphics card is a ATI 5770 by Asus, and it's the Vapor X model. And then the power supply is Thermaltake 850 watt. Now the hard drives. The hard drives I have is that I'll be using for this particular Mac build is a OCZ Vertex 2 solid state drive. It's a 60 gig solid state drive. The other hard drives have Windows installations on it, so I'm not going to be touching those. And then my two optical drives up here, one is a DVD burner by Pioneer, and the other one is an LG Blu-ray player, or Blu-ray burner. Alright, so the first thing that we got to do before setting this up is downloading the necessary file. Here I am at the Mac x86 website, and I gone ahead and registered for an account, because by registering you are allowed to download the files. So go ahead and register, do that first, get that out of the way, and then what you're going to do is go to downloads here, and you click on that, and then you're going to download these particular files. Not all of them, just for my particular build, what I did was I downloaded the bridge helper and iBoot and Multibeast. And if you have an NVIDIA card, then download the NVIDIA 2.1 update. Now this says official NVIDIA drivers, but that just means you have to get 10.6.8 working. This particular build that I'm showing you is using 10.6.7. So I haven't tried 10.6.8 yet, but if you can get that working, then NVIDIA released official Mac drivers to use with 400 series cards and whatnot. More on that later, I guess. So anyways, I have Multibeast, iBoot, and Bridge Helper. Those are the three essential files that you're going to need. That's for a more generalized download. Alright, so one very important file that you're going to need is a DSDT, and you can get that from the DSDT Database, which was right here. DSDT Database, click on that. And now you're going to choose your motherboard, and this is where it's very important that you know the BIOS version that you have, as well as the revision model that you have. So my particular motherboard is a Gigabyte, and they have many different makers and sockets. They don't have the DST for every single thing here, but for the most part, socket 1155 by Gigabyte, they've got a pretty good support. So my particular chipset is a Z68 here, and then I have the UD3P, which is right here. right? And so there's two DSDT files, and one is for the F4 BIOS and one is for the F5 BIOS. Right now I'm on BIOS F4, but like I said, I'm going to update my BIOS, and I'm going to show you that to the F5. That's what I downloaded from the Gigabyte website. So I'll just go ahead and download the F5 DSDT file. So download that. I've got that. Now I'm going to copy that to the thumb drive. Right, and the next thing you'll need is Mac OSX 10.6.7 update combo. So download that. Click on download. Alright, so the next thing you're going to need is a BIOS update. So most likely the motherboard came shipped with an older BIOS. My particular motherboard came shipped with F2, and I'll show you in a little bit how to check to see what BIOS version you have. It's in the BIOS. It's really easy to find. So my particular motherboard is this one right here, the GAZ68 UD3P B3 revision 1.0, and on the motherboard in the far left corner has the revision. There's two particular ones for my build, and it's 1.0 and 1.1, I think it is. So anyways, I'm here at the Gigabyte website, so you're going to have to navigate to your particular motherboard and find your BIOS, and then go ahead and download it. There's a new version called F5, so I'll go ahead and download that, I guess. And I'll go ahead and update my BIOS. Hopefully that doesn't mess anything up. Okay, so I've downloaded all the necessary files. Now what I actually have to do is extract my BIOS. And the thing that I downloaded off of the Gigabyte website was an exe file. So I'll need a Windows machine for this. And so I have Windows running in the background here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this file over onto the Windows side. For you at home, just copy it to a thumb drive, go to a Windows machine, copy it onto the desktop, and what you got to do is double click the file and extract it. I'll just go ahead and extract it to the desktop. Now this executable unpacked program and an auto exec file, you're supposed to throw it in the thumb drive and boot up, and it's supposed to go into this file or whatever, but I'm gonna do it a different way. I'm updating the BIOS using the BIOS itself, and I'll also show you that as well. But this is the particular BIOS right here. This is specifically the file that you need to update your BIOS. So go ahead and copy that to a thumb drive. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my thumb drive here. Copy that. And go ahead and also copy all the other files that you had, the combo update and what else, the Multiboot, Multibeast, iBoot, and Bridge Helper, all that stuff. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to burn the iBoot ISO to a disk. And so I have it copied here. This is what I downloaded off the Tony Mac website. So I'll just double click that, and it's going to want me to unzip it. So I'll just copy it onto the desktop there. So this is the ISO file, and if you have Windows 7, Windows 7 comes built in with a image burner. So you can burn this to a disk by just double clicking on it. Insert a disk. You can put a CD in there or a DVD. It doesn't matter, whichever one you want. I prefer the CDs because this file is so small. So you click on burn, and you burn it to a disk like this, right? So now you're actually ready. You've got your iBoot disk, you've got your Snow Leopard disk, retails 10.6.3 preferably. Alright, so you got your thumb drive with all the necessary files on there. You're good to go. Next we're going to go to the BIOS, and I'm going to show you where I said about to check what version BIOS you have. Right? Okay, so I just booted up and I'm in my BIOS settings, and so the very first screen here, the motherboard intelligent tweaker, I'm going to check the BIOS version, and right here it shows BIOS version F4. So that's how I know what BIOS version I have. And I'm about to now update it to F5, and so I have to escape, and F8 is this Q flash option right here, so I'll press F8. It's going to ask me to enter Q flash. Alright, so the first option I have is update BIOS from a drive. I'll press enter, and so I have my thumb drive plugged in and it recognizes it, and so it's it designated it as HDD 0-0, and then it says drive, so I'll just press enter. And normally if you had files, other files and folders, you'll see those other files and folders, but I only have the F5 BIOS file right here, so I'll just go ahead and highlight that and press enter. Now it's reading and it says, are you sure you want to update the BIOS? I'm going to say enter to continue. And this is the scary part, because this is where my system could either break down and turn my computer into a brick. But particularly this update is supposed to enable the SSD caching, or the solid state drive feature, and the EIF, whatever BIOS features. I don't know, it's something fancy. Right, so the copy BIOS is complete. It says pass. Press any key to continue, and then I'm gonna go ahead and press escape to reset. So it's gonna now reset, and now I'm gonna go into the BIOS because it erased all of my settings and I have to set it up again, but that's fine. I'm gonna show you what it needs for setting up a Hackintosh. Alright, so now I'm in the BIOS, and I'm gonna be making some changes. So now I'm at the BIOS version F5. Right, so right here I don't really need to change anything. This is fine. Hard disk boot priority, I'm going to move the OCZ Vertex 2. That's going to be my Hackintosh drive. And then the first boot device has to be CD-ROM, because I'm going to boot the iBoot disk. Second boot device could be hard drive. Third boot device, I'm just going to go ahead and disable. Everything else I can leave alone. My initial display could be PCI Express. That's fine. And that's pretty much it for that. Integrated peripherals. The PCH SATA control mode should be at AHCI. That's very important. Everything else can stay the same. The GSATA 3 control mode should also be AHCI. And that's pretty much it for there. Power management, very important setting, is the HPET mode to 64-bit mode. And everything else can stay the same there. Right, so that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to insert my iBoot disk into my disk drive, and I'm going to restart my system. Alright, so we are here at the iBoot screen. Pay no attention to all of these things here. It's very cluttered, I know. It's my Windows installation. Now, like I said, I do not recommend that you have your other drives plugged in here, unplug them, but I'm just lazy, and I'm gonna leave that there, and I know what I'm doing, hopefully. So at this point, what you're gonna do is, because you have the iBoot disk in there, you're going to eject the iBoot disk. And now you're gonna put in your Mac OSX Snow Leopard 10.6.3 preferably, although it doesn't really have to be, but it is preferable for these newer systems because they have preloaded drivers somewhat. Alright, so the important thing is, when you put in the disk, wait about 5 seconds, or at least wait until the disk has finished accessing it and the little light isn't blinking anymore. Just wait, just give it 10 seconds. right? And then once you're ready, press F5, and what's going to happen is that it's going to change real quick, and it's going to highlight. It's way over here. Yours would just be 1, but it's way over here, and it's the Mac OSX Install disk. It's already highlighted, so I'll just go ahead and press enter. Now we're going to boot into the installation process, and we're going to install Mac OSX. Alright, so here we are at the beginning of the installation process. I chose English as my language, and the very first thing we have to do is format the hard drive that we're going to be putting Mac OSX on. And so click on Utilities right up at the top here, and click on Disk Utilities. Now this is a very, very dangerous thing if you have a hard drive with data on it that you need. So this goes without saying that the hard drive that you're using to install Mac OSX on is going to be wiped out. It's going to be erased. All your data is going to be lost here, right? Now I went and left my other drives, which has very important data on there. I don't recommend you doing that. I recommend you unplugging your drives. I left mine there, but this right here is the 60 gig OCZ Vertex 2 drive that I'm installing on. So just click on that on your drive that you're installing Mac OSX on. Click on Partition, then click on One Partition, and under Options, you make sure it says GUID Partition Table. By default, if this is a fresh brand new drive and it was made for PC, it's probably going to say Master Boot Record, but make sure it says GUID Partition Table. Click on OK, name it something, I'll call it The Geek. Right, so I'll leave that, and then Mac OSX Journal, yeah, that's fine. Click Apply, speak now, forever hold your peace. It's gonna wipe everything out. Okay, the partition is complete. Go ahead and close Disk Utilities. Now click on Continue, Agree. Right, so these are the drives that you cannot install on because they're my Windows drives. Here is the Geek. That's the new drive that I just formatted. Now this is my own personal preference. I'm just going to install QuickTime and Rosetta for legacy items. I'll leave X11. But I'm going to uninstall the language translations, additional fonts, and printer support. I'm going to leave that out. It makes for a faster install. And click on Install. And so this should take about 20 minutes. One thing that I've noticed, that the computer will go to sleep for some reason after so long. So don't leave this unattended. Come back every 5 minutes or so to move the mouse around so it doesn't fall asleep. Apparently, when it falls asleep, the PC doesn't know what's going on and it just restarts the machine right in the middle of the installation process. So for good measure, I don't know if this will happen to you on your machine, but I've seen it happen on this particular machine. So, you know, just keep it awake. And we'll be back. This will reboot on its own automatically, and so when it does, make sure that you have the iBoot disk. You need to have the iBoot disk in there. Hopefully I catch it in time. If not, you don't catch it in time and it reboots and you're at some screen, you get some error, you just hit the reset button. Make sure that the disk, the iBoot disk, is inside. Hit the reset button and you'll be alright. You'll be able to boot into the partitions. So we'll be back. Alright, so the computer just finished installing Mac OS X, and I've rebooted, and I rebooted with the iBoot disk inside. And as you can see here, the iBoot disk is installed, is highlighted. And so I'm going to go over to the OS X installation, which is way over here, which is right there. It's labeled The Geek. I know you can't see it because I got all of this junk in the way, but that'll clear itself. You'll see. And so I'm just going to highlight that, my Mac OSX installation. I'm going to press enter. And now it's going to boot the Mac OSX, and we're going to be installing the necessary files and configuring Multibeast. Alright, so this is the standard setup that we got to go through. It's just basically a click-through affair. I'm not going to fill anything out here. I'm just going to breeze right through it. Not even going to set up a password. Worry about that later. Register later. Set the time zone. Set the time. That is incorrect. Huh. Right, click on done. And it's picking up all of your Windows hard drives, so I'm gonna hit don't use. And then I gotta set up the keyboard here. Okay, now I'm gonna plug in my thumb drive that's got all my necessary files on it. So plug that in. And what I'm gonna wanna do is copy all of these files here, except for the BIOS file. I don't need that. And I don't need the F4 DSDT. So here I have the files copied onto the desktop. I'm going to go ahead and update the Mac OS X to 10.6.7. Just basically a click-through affair. Authenticate, continue, and this should take about 10 minutes. Now, it's very important that you do not restart after you've installed this. It's going to ask you to restart, but you're just going to set it aside and you're going to run Multibeast next. So we'll wait for this to finish. So the combo update finished installing, and I'm not going to restart. Instead, I'm going to double click on Multibeast. And now I'm going to run Multibeast. Oop, sometimes you might get this where it crashes. I'm just going to click on ignore and run it again. So click on continue, agree. Alright, so like I said earlier, it's very important that you have these files on the desktop, particularly this file here, your DST file. Make sure that this is on the desktop, and don't change the name either, just leave it as it is. So you're going to click on user DST installed, and then click on system utilities for both of these here. Alright, so for drivers, now this is where it's going to differ from your machine if it's different from my motherboard. But for the audio, my particular machine will take ALC8XX HDA and the Apple HDA rollback. This is very common in the motherboard, the Sandy Bridge or Z68 motherboards, or the P67 motherboards at that. It's very common with the newer systems, so that might work for you as well. If you want to see what kind of audio drivers you have, I suggest you going to a site like Newegg and looking at the specifications for your audio drivers, see which ones you have, and you can also choose one of these here if your audio drivers are one of these, right? So for disk, the only thing you need to do here is for this first one, the IOA-CHI block storage injector. Right, so for graphics, you can leave that alone, unless you have an NVIDIA graphics. You can go ahead and do NVIDIA enabler. I've seen this work for many of the 200 series cards, but not really for the 400 series cards. That you'll need another installer file for that. Right, so I'm going to leave that alone. I don't need any of that. Under miscellaneous, I don't need any of this either. I could do the USB 3.0. I'll go ahead and check that, although I don't have anything that's USB 3.0. Actually, I'm going to uncheck that and leave that alone. since I don't have USB 3, I'm not going to use it. I don't want to risk messing up my machine. Alright, so for network, I'm going to choose the Realtek Gigabit Ethernet. This is a very general driver or text file, and it works for most, if not all, Realtek Ethernet NIC cards. Right, so next is bootloaders. I'm going to choose Chimera, and then for customizations under boot options, I'm going to do the 64-bit Apple boot screen. I've heard that for depending on the graphics card or whatnot, 64-bit or 32-bit works better, or is works if you're not sure. Go with 32-bit, but for me, 64-bit right off the bat works just fine. System definitions, this is basically just an identifier so that Mac OS X can identify your processor. And so for this particular machine, as well as many, or if not all, Sandy Bridge processors should be on this Mac Pro 3 1. And then themes, that's just your personal preference, whatever theme that you feel like doing. I'm just going to leave it. I'll leave it alone. I don't need any of that. Right, so after that, you just click on continue and install. And this should take about a couple of minutes. After that, we're going to do the bridge helper. Okay, so Multibeast is finished installing. Now I'm going to install the bridge helper. This should only take about a minute. Okay, so that's finished installing. Now I'm going to restart, but before that I want to eject all of my thumb drives and the iBoot disk. And so when it restarts here, make sure that your Mac drive is the drive that's going to boot first. Don't let your Windows drive be the first to boot. Make sure that you set in the BIOS to have the Mac drive boot. Alright, so here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, Mac OS X on a Z68 chipset. And so I just want to verify some things, make sure that the sound works. Yep, the sound does work. Okay, and then now I want to check the Ethernet. Make sure that the Ethernet works. A new interface is detected, so I'll click on OK. This is going to acquire an IP address. Alright, so now that it's got an IP address, I'm going to open up the internet, and there we have it. Internet is working, sound is working. Oh, and let me test the video. I know this isn't really a great way of testing it, but I just want to make sure. Body rocks in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time, and we gon' make you lose your mind. Everybody just have a good time. Alright, so that works out okay, played in HD just fine. That's pretty much it. One last thing I want to talk about was the Windows dual boot side. So I'm going to restart this real quick and go to the dual boot screen. Talk a little bit about the Windows dual boot side. Alright, so when this boots up, you're going to get this screen, and it's going to count down, and you just got to press spacebar or some button to interrupt the countdown. And now we have the Mac drive, a Windows drive, Windows drive, Windows drive. Now this says system reserve. That's your Windows boot drive. That's your Windows boot partition, right? So this is where Windows is sitting, and this is just an extra Windows drive that I have for storage. But this is the drive for booting Windows. So just mouse over or hit the arrow button over to that and press enter. And now Windows starting. Alright, so some important things about the Windows. Now, if you already had Windows installed on a drive and you installed Windows prior to setting up what is it, AHCI mode in the BIOS. If you installed Windows prior to setting that up in the BIOS, when you try to start Windows again, it's not going to work, right? Because Windows is missing some file or some program that recognizes or enables the AHCI mode that you set in the BIOS. So my only suggestion is that to have a clean install of Windows if you want to have Windows going. If you already have your Windows machine, I don't really know. I think there's a way of getting AHCI, you know, plug in into that Windows. I don't know. I usually just do a clean install, or before I install Windows, I know that I'm going to be making a Mac machine, so I set the BIOS to the AHCI mode. That's what I did for this particular machine. So yeah, that's something to think about. So remember, if you installed prior to the setting of the BIOS, your Windows machine won't work, but don't freak out. Just set the BIOS back to the IDE mode and you should be alright. Okay, so that's about as thorough as I can get it. Hopefully this video helps you out. Do let me know what motherboard you have. If you tried this out on your own stuff and you were successful, definitely list in the comments the parts that you're using for other people to read. And as always, please subscribe, rate, comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Spread the video if you want to share it on your Facebook or Google+. Check out my other videos and whatnot. Same deal. Alright, thanks for watching. Johnny the Geek out. Peace.